All right, welcome everybody. Can you hear that garbage going on next door? And by next door, I mean in the small drive that weaves past my back window towards another house in the woods with a neighbor that I no longer like, apparently. All right, probably today I'm just going to edit a story instead of writing one from scratch. I think I got that in me. Um, One of the meds they have me on that I'm slowly adjusting to is like a 24-hour nitroglycerin release. So I kind of am on the edge of a headache like all the time. And apparently, one thing that can push me right over the edge into a headache is a pair of leaf blowers in the neighbor's yard outside my house. So that started just minutes before we jumped on. So feel free to jump in at any time to tell me what's going on with your day, because I'd love the distraction at any point. All right, jumping over, we are looking at a story that I wrote a while back called Secrets of the Tooth Fairy. I have a story that in my last stream that I was on, I had wrote like maybe half a page, probably not that much, and then I had to get off the stream, and it turned out it was because my heart had an irregular beat, and I went to the emergency room after that, and for the last 2 weeks I've been trying to adjust to the meds to make that stop. In a few days I'm going to head out to AuthorCon. Hopefully there won't be any leaf blowers out there, and looking forward to that because it's a convention that is connected to Scares That Care that I like a great deal. There's a number of people there that I care about, and I'm looking forward to seeing again. Of course, I'm going to take books and try to sell books, but that's a real small priority for me at this point in my life. So I'll sell what I sell, and that'll be it. But I really do want to kind of hang out with people again and see folks and that kind of thing. They got me on some painkillers because my kidneys started acting up. One of the things I'm on is a blood thinner, and I have polycystic kidney disease, and it's caused some trouble in the kidneys that created a great deal of pain. And so they got me on some painkillers that I'm using sparingly. And if I have a rough time the weekend, then that should help me get through or whatever. But hoping I'm on the tail end of that. But we're going to take a look at a story here, and that'll be what the focus here will be. Obviously, you didn't hear about the leaf blower convention in the hotel meeting hall. That's fine. That's fine. God bless them. I'm sure they hold America together. I mean, if you don't move the leaves, like let's say hypothetically that you lived in the woods, like I do, and like the neighbors that if you kind of weave way off the path, they live there as well. So we have kind of driveways that weave through the woods. Now, being in the woods, the trees have leaves on them, and the leaves fall. So if you don't have a leaf blower come through every other day to blow the leaves from the trail to the ground beside the trail, I mean, what's the point of even living in the woods, right? Remember the con we did where they had a tea party or something at the same time? I think that was the romance convention. We did the tea parties were to promote your work. I actually joined one of the tea parties as a host. I was trying to sell some books. It actually worked to sell some books. I was way out of my depth though. I don't know what was going on there. Talk about a genre that has drama, romance. Romance has almost as much drama as crime fiction. No, the first Imaginarium. They were having a tea party? It's weird that we have more than one tea party story from more than one convention, Armand. I think that means that we're living wrong. So the first Imaginarium, we were at that hotel in Kentucky, and they decided to have a tea party next door, I guess. I don't think we were allowed, though. That wasn't a loud thing. Some dress up in the ballroom. Oh, there you go. Yeah, fortunately, there's a bunch of strange-looking folks at conventions like Imaginarium, but I don't think that was a loud one, so I guess we got along okay. I do remember it. World Horror in Atlanta, and I don't know how long ago that was. It's before they split. It's the last one I went to. Kind of that moment where I decided it wasn't worth it anymore. I know that they were doing like a prom or something, and like some of the kids from the prom like wandered over to one of the parties from the horror convention, and when I saw the kids coming, I'm like, I'm out of here. I got up and I left because there's no way I was hanging out with those maniacs, with like underage high school kids walking in. I was not going to be a part of that bad judgment, so I went off, and some other people with good sense did as well, and we weren't a part of that. So all that to say, I'm really excited to go to these conventions. We're going to see what's happening. I'm curious about this convention as well. Partly, again, it's technically a new convention, but Scares the Care has been around forever, so like I don't really think of it as a brand new convention. It's just kind of an extension of an old one, and it's probably going to be smaller, but again, small compared to the crowd that we. Hey Frank, thank you for being here. Small to the crowd compared to who was buying books anyway. So it's, in my mind, it may be like a half or 2/3 of the convention that was interested in the books in the first place. So it doesn't really matter to me. And again, if I don't sell a single book, I really don't care. I'm just at a place in my life where being able to go and do something is a reward for me. But I'm kind of curious because I've sort of spent 2.5 years building up sort of a strange audience. And I don't know that I have a large audience compared to a lot of the authors that are there, but my audience comes from a couple different places, and more than one of them's told me they're showing up, so it's going to be interesting to see who's there. And then some from Twitch, but then from other areas where I'm writing and getting known as well. And also I have 2.5 years worth of books releases that I have never taken to a convention before, so I have no idea how those are going to play. Armand and I have always joked about packing for conventions because, of course, I'm not sure how you do it now, Armand. We haven't been to the same convention in so long, but used to you would pack everything back. I guess back before you were shifting to crime fiction. You would pack just every book just in case, and I got to where I was packing fewer and fewer books because, of course, the reality was we weren't really selling that much anyway. And then there was that one convention that, for whatever reason, I kind of caught fire a little bit, and I can't remember if it was a reading or what happened that got people's attention, and so they started coming to the table, and I sold out of book 1 of the series because I'd only brought like 15 copies or whatever, which again is still a ridiculous number of copies most of the time. And I had people like buying the first book online in front of me and then buying the other ones as well. Now, of course, then I started bringing more books, and that never happened again. My next book signing in April, only thrillers and nonfiction, 1 crate. A second crate with some horror and extra thrillers. That's it. That's probably the smart way to do it. I'm taking a lot more this time. But again, it's not like an excessive amount of each book. It's just the idea that I've had so many books come out over the last few years of not going to conventions that even only bringing 5 to 10 copies of each book is adding up to a lot of books. And so I got, and also, with my health restraints and stuff, I don't want to carry giant, heavy boxes, so I've split them up among more boxes. So I'm not carrying as much, but so that's kind of my prep for the convention. It'd be great if like there was just some weird moment where I'm like selling out of a bunch of stuff because I haven't been anywhere for a while, so people who normally buy stuff from me will just buy a bunch of stuff or that kind of thing. I also have a couple series where I'm cutting some pretty deep deals, so like the Dead Song Legend series. If you're buying the whole series, I think I've cut to a big discount rate. A lot of the young reader books I'm doing at $5 each, which technically still turns me a profit, but it's and then one of them I'm doing like a deal for the whole series that cuts it even further than that. So there's going to be a lot of cheap books on the table too, but we'll see how that plays out. I am really excited to be there though, because again, it is kind of a different crowd, and there's a bunch of author folks that have. Thank you for resubscribing. I appreciate that. there's a bunch of author folks that I've sort of made friends with that I've never actually met before. And again, with the pandemic stretching out so long, it just oh, hey, Baldensberger. Okay, I didn't realize you changed your name there. Yeah, so going that long without going to conventions and suddenly going back, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the market's like at all. But again, if I didn't sell a single book, that's still not the reason that I went to the conventions. I really just want to see people again, especially at this stage in my life where my health is in pretty deep question. And so, not to be morbid or anything, but I'm not sure how many more healthy years I got down the road. And so this year is kind of all these conventions, even though I'm getting a table and I'm selling books, the real reason I'm going is to see people again while I'm still relatively healthy enough to enjoy the time and all that. I'm excited to see you too. That Texas trip I'm looking forward to. It's going to be a long drive, but my family is going to be doing stuff while I'll be at the convention and things. So definitely want to see everybody there again. But a big part of that for me, again, is getting to. I've scheduled my conventions around the idea of seeing people that I care about, with however that happens. Sold 30 books this weekend with Max. That's good. Texas seems to be a good spot. I'm not sure that every convention there is great, but Texas just seems to be a good spot for conventions and stuff these days. So there are book buyers out here. I'm sure there are. Max does a great job with that kind of stuff too. He's really both as an individual author and then as a publisher. He's really pulled it together well. And of course, you're doing conventions all the time, John. So you're got to be getting the hang of it at this point, I imagine, and figuring out which ones work and which ones don't, as much as we're able to figure such a thing. I'm going to take a look at this story, and I have 10 more years, I think. I'm going to be editing through this story, but feel free to comment and question in the chat, and I'm happy to stop. Especially with leaf blowers going in my ear all the time, which is really the hallmark of any great stream, is do you have leaf blowers going outside? That's how the pros do it, I believe. So I don't remember how long ago this was. It was before my recent 2-week episode of trying to get my heart back in rhythm, but after the heart attack, so somewhere in that window. This is Secrets of the Tooth Fairy, one that I'm particularly proud of, but I haven't looked at it since I wrote it, so I know it can use some work here. All right, Jack did his very best to pretend to be asleep as the winged figure. Look at that, already a typo in the first sentence. That's how you know that you are dealing with a professional. Winged figure moved between his bed and that of his brother Dylan. Hey, Daniel, thanks for being here. Looking forward to seeing you in a few days. I just saw a TikTok, Daniel, of, I don't remember who it was, but they were gushing about your books. And so that popped up on my feed. Of course, it made me angry and gave me a headache because they weren't talking about me. But they were talking about the co-written book you had, and then several of your individual books. So I should have committed the name to memory, but I didn't know we'd be talking about it this soon. But it was cool to see somebody talking positive about your books there. Don't compliment Volpe. I'm going to do the best I can. Daniel and I are going to be on that's a great video indeed, and a very smart person. I knew he's just going to get even more of a big head. Daniel and I are going to be on a panel of like 12 to 15 people. I don't remember how many are on there. Basically the panel is everybody who's been nominated for a Splatterpunk award. It's Wrath James White, giant cranium. Wrath James White is going to be the moderator, and the panel's like an hour and a half long, but if with the number of people on it, if you divide that hour and a half, you come up to something like 6 minutes each. And of course there's a couple egos on there. Guys I like just fine, but definitely a few egos. And there's no way they're going to be able to keep their comments to 6 minutes, so that's going to pull me down. And I think that what I'm going to do with my time is just compliment the other authors next to me, so that I look like I'm taking the high road, and then people will think that I'm really confident in my work, and And then they'll say, well, he must be the best writer on there because he's the one that's talking about other people instead of talking about himself the whole time. That is my plan, though. So that's going to be my first panel, is the overpacked what is going on with Splatterpunk panel. Man, do you remember the substance abuse panel of the 2020 KC? I'm going to opt for nudity. There you go. The substance abuse panel. I don't remember that one. I love everyone on that panel, but I went off the rails fast. KillerCon 2020. That would have been virtual, right? That one, because the last physical KillerCon was 2019, and I was there. So no, I didn't see the substance abuse one. Really, if you're going to do a substance abuse panel, it's best to do it virtually from home. I mean, that's probably the safest way to do it. Jeff Burke, a good one. John Skip, Nate Southern. Yeah, 2020 was virtual. I bet those guys have stories. I interviewed Jeff Burke for the podcast I used to have, and it was actually a very good podcast. But we didn't go nearly as far off the rails as we could have in a Jeff Burke interview, I guess. All right, so he wanted to believe this was their father or mother wearing some kind of costume, but the proportions were all wrong, and his parents were not practical jokers. This eliminated any question that the Tooth Fairy wasn't real. Jack wished Dylan had never talked him into staying up to catch her in the act. The man can talk. Yeah, he can. Well, yes, the man can talk if he shows up. So, and again, I love Jeff Burke to death, but he operates by his own clock and his own calendar, and then somehow still managed to be successful with most things that he undertakes. But trying to nail him down for that interview, I called him, of course, at the time the interview was supposed to take place. He's like, hold on, I'm going to get some coffee and then I'll call you back. So I had to call him again because it apparently took him about 10 minutes to get his coffee. He's like, all right, hold on, I'm almost ready. And then finally we sat down for the interview. But that was, and I think we'd gotten delayed a couple times too. Brooks' Naughty Cat's wearing a gutter punk costume. And when the cats aren't in the costume, they're everywhere because he lives in a house of a house of cats. Not even his cats. He lives in a house of other people's cats that he takes care of. As Jack dared to peek through his slitted eyelids, he saw his brother's eyes were wide open with fear. Dylan needed to start acting if he didn't want to be discovered by this creature. Dylan needed to start acting like he was asleep if he didn't want to be discovered by this creature. The fear in his brother's eyes unsettled Jack. Dylan was only 8, but he was a full 13 months older than Jack, so he was supposed to be the brave one. All right. Armand says, I never bothered trying to interview him. His legend preceded Jeff for not getting a good or listenable conversation. Our conversation turned out well. It's just a matter of getting him seated in front of the microphone in time to hit the record button. That seemed to be the only thing. So the interviews that have been captured, much like the blurry pictures of Bigfoot, for instance, are quite captivating. Jap kept his breathing slow and steady. He made sure to make a little noise with his nose. That always convinced his parents he was asleep. My sons are terrible at pretending they're asleep. They are the worst, and it really disappoints me. Part of it's my own fault because I trained them to be honest, which is good in some ways, but I think sometimes good leadership and being able to get by in the world does require the ability to tell some lies. So I have failed my children in teaching them to lie well. The younger one does okay, but he's not good at not getting caught, so he doesn't tend to do it quite as much as I think his nature would push him to. The older boy is a big ball of guilt, and so he tends to not lie, and when he does lie, it bothers him a great deal. But he will try to pretend to be asleep if he's still awake long after he's supposed to be. Now, my boys are homeschooled, and the older one is in a high school program connected to a university, so he does his stuff virtually. So he can work at pretty much any hour he wants. And being 16, he now Both my boys are very little because their parents are little, so they don't look like they're as old as they are. So he probably looks like he's 12 or younger with his size, but he's 16. And so we kind of turned a blind eye to him, like staying up way too late and getting his work done because he's passing his classes and doing fine. So sometimes he's up to 1, 2, or 3 in the morning doing schoolwork for the next day, and then he'll sleep in. And he has a job and some things like that too. But in the midst of that, sometimes he'll pretend to be asleep when I walk in and open his door, but he's terrible at it. Like, he's not really closing his eyes, so it's very clear that he's not asleep because he has his eyes slitted, but not real great. And it's all the lights are on, so you can see it very clearly. So I'm trying to figure out like what he's doing. Like, is there something wrong with him where he's having some kind of breakdown or something? And so finally I just told him, I'm like, you got to stop pretending to be asleep because you're terrible at it. Like, it's embarrassing for both of us. And the younger one's just as bad because, of course, he'll want to do like fake snoring and stuff. So even though he's 10 and should know better, that's still kind of his move. So they're just awful at it. If my kids were in this story with the Tooth Fairy trying to pretend to be asleep, they wouldn't have made it past the first page. All right. So these characters are more capable of that kind of thing than my kids are, I guess. All right, he watched at the figure. All right, we're going to need to say as. This is what editing's for. You normally fix this stuff when nobody's looking, and then you look like a storytelling genius. In my case, I'm doing it in front of you, so you can see that I can't even write a sentence. All right, he watched as the figure of the Tooth Fairy knelt beside his bed. She had a smell to her. Okay, I got a conjugation issue here. He'd expected it. He expected it to be perfume or candy. It was earthy and green. Once you get older, you have to fake that you weren't asleep. There you go. There you go. I mean, unless you're in like a problematic relationship and so you're pretending to be asleep to avoid a fight or that kind of thing. You have to be pretty good at that. Or, you're a parent and you have kids and it's somebody's turn to get up and help the kid who had a nightmare. So you pretend to be asleep so that the other parent has to do it. I mean, there's all sorts of situations. Tom is probably having to pretend not to sleep at work. So that seems to be his issue, which probably goes to all sorts of other issues, Tom. But again, I'm not trying to call you out here on the stream. But of course, you're probably at work right now listening to the stream, trying to pretend like you're not sleeping as well. So good luck to that. If my sons were hired there, they'd be terrible at that. All right, it was earthy and green, sort of like mowed grass, but more boggy. There was something odd about her eyes. It was dark, but the low cast glow of the night light beyond the end of the bed caught her strange eyes. They were faceted, like a jewel. Later, after it was too late, Jack would think they were compounded eyes, like those of an insect, but in this humanoid creature's face. I'm trying to reevaluate how I do foreshadowing, because I think one of the things that I'm hearing more and more from editors is that a lot of writers are being a little too heavy with the foreshadowing. Not that they can't use it, but they're almost explaining too much. And so I have that little thing later, after it was too late, Jack would think they were compound eyes, knowing that some nastiness is going to happen in the story before the end. So I think that's light foreshadowing, but again, apparently a lot of authors are having trouble not being too heavy-handed with the foreshadowing, like trying to explain too much. All right. Compounded eyes. She licked her lips. Her tongue was very long and looked to be candy pink as far as Jack could tell, but it wasn't forked like a serpent's tongue. Let me add in the article there. Even though it made a serpentine slurp. I don't know that serpents actually slurp, but I think I can get away with it here. She's going to eat me, Jack thought. It took everything in him to continue. Got a conjugation issue. To fake the sleep breathing. Nope, I don't like that. To fake the breathing of sleep. Here we go. That rolls off the tongue a little better. Of course, most people read stories silently, but you get what I mean. Her arms were thick and hairy like those of a man. He wanted again to believe that this was his father having fun, but even Dad's arms weren't that hairy. Her armpits were hairy too, and that boggy, green, sweaty smell got heavier as the thick hand slid under Jack's pillow. His head lifted and bobbed on top of the pillow with the Tooth Fairy's arm underneath. This made zero sense. Even if this really was her, how could any kid stay asleep if this is how she extracted loose teeth? Jack just wanted it all to be over. Oh, they're really cranking those leaf blowers now. It's like they're a leaf blowing gang. All right, the arm came back out, dropping his head back down. I'm not sure I like that sentence, but I'm going to leave it for now. Jack paused in his breathing, but then resumed. She held the small tooth high up in the air to catch the light where she still knelt. The tooth had a deep hole in the bottom. A spot of brown dried blood remained there. Jack remembered even though... let me change this. Jack remembered that even though the light wasn't bright enough for him to see it now. All right, I like that, okay? She seemed satisfied with the offering and dropped the tooth into a sparkling pink bag over her shoulder. She fished about in a pouch on her belt to the jingle of coins. Jack usually got dollars for his teeth now, but he wasn't about to start complaining. It occurred to him for the first time that the person in this strange costume with the thick hairy arms and hairy armpits might be some strange man sneaking into their room. How would a stranger know about his missing tooth? That's a good question. Let's put a question mark at the end of it, just for form's sake. His parents were on Facebook, but Dad mostly just argued politics, and Mom just shared her daily Wordle scores and invited people to play Candy Crush so she could get more lives. Besides, this hairy tooth fairy had big boobs under her striped dress. The fairy breathed out in Jack's face as she lifted a coin from the pouch. The breath was hot and smelled of a pond on a summer night. She slid the coin under his pillow, and Jack held his breath. Fortunately, she did not root as deeply this time. I'm going to make that the official adverb there. You want to limit your adverbs, but when you use them, you want to use them particularly. Then she stood back to her full height, towering over Jack's bed, hulking over him. He was consumed in her massive shadow. Jack, her massive shadow within the already dark room. I'll say bedroom. Good stuff. All right. It's those little touches that are going to be the reason I win the Pulitzer Prize. Jack decided to pull another of his tricks. He caught his breath in mid-inhale, gave a little choking sound, smacked his lips on some spit, took one deep breath, and returned to long, slow breathing. The long, slow breathing of pretend sleep. It seemed to work. She slowly turned away, and her wings started to flutter in a buzz that was more fly or bee rather than butterfly. I really feel you need a pipe with that beard. Probably. My doctors would be super excited to learn I took up smoking after all they've done to try to keep me alive recently. Of course, I could just chew on it, right? Or get one of the pipes that blows bubbles, like soap. All right, Jack decided to pull another of his tricks. No, we already did that. That insectile motion made Jack feel like he was trapped in his room with some sort of alien or monster who might be capable of anything. I read it as beard. Of course, I mean, who doesn't need a pipe with their bread? Am I right? It's effing awesome. I just think you need more long wizard pipe. Okay, then maybe a hat. Like, let's see. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like Gandalf, like... Australian didgeridoo type pipe. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I need a big floppy hat too. I usually have floppy hats too, but they don't have points on them. I should go full wizard. I kind of have that dirty lizard. I have that dirty wizard look to me. All right. Armand Rosamelia is a huge fan. There you go. Armand Rosamelia is a huge fan of my haircut. He hated it when we both had our head shaved and people couldn't tell us apart anymore. And so since I've grown my hair out, shaved a lot, lizard, I walked into that one. But since I grow my hair out and people can tell us apart, Armand's a lot happier, I think. Of course, I think he misses me a lot because he also got a cat. So I didn't know what that was about. He lied and said that I'm growing my hair out now too. There you go, like the old days. He said his wife found this cat, but the more I think about it, it makes more sense that Armand got the cat and got his wife to go along with it. And the obvious reason is that he misses me. We haven't seen each other in a while, and so he needed the companionship of an annoying little animal that pestered him all the time. I call the cat Jay, but she's already taller than you. Probably in better health. I got a kid. I had a bad kidney. I was going to say I had a kidney removed, but I didn't. The cat had its tail removed before you guys found it. Battling in parking lots and stuff. All right. The insectile motion made Jack feel like he was trapped in the room with some sort of alien or monster who might be capable of anything. He could see his brother's eyes again, still open wide. All right, Daniel, you look like a sage Spiegel with that much of the name. I don't think that's a compliment. I'm probably thinning as much as Smeagol, I would say. And I don't collect things. You know, Smeagol was kind of a collector. He hoarded his things. I'm kind of a guy that hates collections. I do collect a lot of books, but mostly just because I'm reading them. And I also have this bad habit of like just picking an author and reading all their books in order instead of reading everywhere like a normal person. It is, trust me, gorgeous. Oh, what a mess. This weekend's going to be insane. All right. The Tooth Fairy lifted off and bumped their ceiling fan. Fat bunnies of dust drifted down to the carpet from where they had been disturbed upon the blades. She crossed the room in a bobbling motion through the air. Wait until your next shipment of Funko Pops to add to your collection. We are talking about building a room onto the house so my wife can have an office. And also I got to do something with all this piles and piles of zombie book money that I have pouring in. Since I have no vices and I don't have the energy to really go anywhere, we need to spend our money on an addition. I don't think it's going to be a Funko Pop room, though. We are putting a big closet in that room, though, to kind of help alleviate some of the clutter we have around here. But I'm kind of the opposite of a collector. I don't want stuff. Okay. When she opened the door, she made no clear effort to stay quiet. You need to start investing in producing super weird porn. Like the weirdest. Well, I would definitely have to just produce it. I'm not that I guess technically I'm cleared for all that. My doctors weren't specific on performance level, like professional performance level. But they did clear me for all positions. So I suppose technically I could, but I think at this stage of my life, I would be better behind the camera. A closet for Jay's 4 drab shirts. Listen, Armand, Rosamelia, I know you like to make fun of my gray shirts, but I wear all sorts of different colors of shirts. Gray just happens to be like my favorite color, just like the Mr. Jones song. But I am very self-conscious about gray shirts now, because every time I'm about to put on a gray shirt, I'm like, is Armand going to see me today? And so I have to be sure. And also, I got to, since I have been mainly just wearing sweatpants for years and years at this point of the apocalypse, I don't really pay attention to, color matching or anything top and bottom. So I have to be careful because, of course, at whatever convention we were at, I was wearing gray top and bottom. And that's when Armand had a problem. Armand is colorblind. He thinks everyone only wears gray. No, but he's right. I did wear a lot of gray. Jay, I'm wearing gray shirt right now. I'm with you, brother. Thanks, man. But I try to mix up my colors now more, simply because I always imagine Armand following me around talking about my shirts. Because I did have a habit of just kind of grabbing the first gray shirt that was on top. I'm actually wearing gray and green shirt from Joe. All right, there you go. See, maybe you're the strange one, Armand. And by strange, I just mean unique. That you're the one that wears something besides gray. Oh, Armand is calling Volpe to be quiet. Still mad at you. Oh, what did Volpe do? What'd you do, Daniel? Did Armand do something? Do something? Do something bad, or was it Volpe that did something bad? Did he beat you in the gross out contest? Because I'm still kind of holding that against him. That pork roll comment, that's going to take a while to go over. Okay. He said spam was better than pork roll. Oh my goodness, Daniel. I can only assume. See, if you guys were at the Oscars and in the same room together, you wouldn't talk like that because there's consequences. Spam better than Taylor ham. I don't know. I will be honest. I don't. Other than the fact that like salt and meat are both good, so if you find the saltiest meat you can, I guess there's some appeal to that. Not being from New Jersey, and my only experience with New Jersey is driving on highways through the smelly parts to get somewhere else. I've just never gotten the affinity to pork roll that other folks have. But I just assume that if Armand likes a thing, that it's the best thing. So even though I won't eat it myself, because again, genetically, I'm just not built to survive those kind of things the way Armand has. I just assume he's right. Armand is red right now. He needs to relax. A nice shade of pink, the color of spam. Keep my pork roll out of your mouth. Oh, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. I really wish that rich people that are way above me would do more trailer park type moves like that to keep me entertained. Gives us something to talk about. Armand, I'm saying this to you. I'm really excited to see you again in May. I have missed you. I have missed our circle of friends. But you and I just kind of hanging out and shooting the breeze, even though we do that online sometimes, and we, on the tail end of various interviews, we'll talk. It's just not the same as being in the same place with you. And even though I guess technically, if you look back through the years, it's probably a handful of times each year that we were in the same place, various conventions and passing through and then staying with you at different times. I miss you a lot, and I'm looking forward to being around you again. I love you, Jay. Seeing you in person is going to be great. Now, that goes into one of my goals for the year, which my health goal this year is to not die. So I've reduced all my my workout goals and all that kind of stuff down to just don't die. So I'm going to try to make it all the way to 2023, and then we'll kind of take it from there. But that'll be my contribution to being able to see all you guys again. It's funny, a lot of people here on the stream, I am looking forward to seeing you again. Frank Edler's kind of avoiding me. I don't think he's going to be any of the places that I'm going to be. So I guess I'm just going to have to make a special trip to his house at some point to see him again. I really enjoyed talking to you in the interview we did about the end of your podcast for that Lit Reactor article. I guess Lit Reactor gives me an excuse to talk to my friends and in interviews and stuff. So it was fun talking to you guys. But I am looking forward to seeing you all again. It just kind of feels like life just kind of got put on hold. Even though I still did stuff and we still communicated online and we still built relationships and stuff, it just kind of feels like this weird non-time that went on between things. I'm heading out. Have a good one, fellas. All right, see you soon, Daniel. I'm still waiting for Lit Reactor to offer me a gig out of the blue. Even you, Armand. Volpe. He was a good addition to the group. I vote that we keep him around a while longer. I think you gotta go for it. It's one of those grab it by the horns, grab it by the horns kind of situations with Lit Reactor. I don't remember how I got involved in that. I think Max may have talked about me, or they may have talked to Max or something like that, and then they asked for a couple sample articles, and then my big appeal at Lit Reactor, honestly, is getting my writing done on time. Apparently, that separates me from every other author that writes for Lit Reactor, and so they're super excited to give me usually two articles a month as opposed to just one, because they can count on me to actually turn them in before they're due. Drop dead and shave your eyebrows. All right, to be fair, my to-do list as a publisher, game designer, writer has me a bit busy. Yeah, you don't need to take on another thing, man. Although I think you would do a good job on Lit Reactor. If I've never actually talked to any of those people in person, but if I do, I'll say, you know who's great? That John Baltusberger. He is awesome. And they're like, does he write articles well? And I'm like, I assume so. Oh, they pay. Yeah, they pay. It's $50 an article now is what they pay. Because if they pay, I'll have to write for them. There you go. All right, I may bring you up sometime. You need to have a couple sample things that they can look at. I know they like humor, but they also kind of like. I don't know if serious is the right word too, but articles that aren't completely farce. I think they work around that a lot. I write articles mostly on horror games, doom music, but okay, man, you'd be surprised because like the big problem that I know we've turned this into a pitch on auditioning for Lit Reactor. The one of the keys with them is just not getting the same article over and over again. So like. Obviously, the amount of time they've been around and the number of things that they've had people write about, the thing they have trouble with is, well, we've already done something like that, or like they would say, we just did an article like that. I wish we had picked yours, but pitch this again next year around the same time, whatever it was. And so I always. I mean, I'm not guaranteed an article any month. You just pitch your ideas and they pick what they want. But I've been averaging about 2 a month recently, pretty steadily. But the key is finding some different thing that they haven't written about yet. So, like the stuff you're mentioning, I know you wrote those things out as kind of the idea of like this is probably off brand for them. But if you can tie it in, and all that stuff ties into what we do. But if you can tie it into the literary writing aspect of it, I guarantee they would pick some of those just because they're different. Jokes aside, I used to be a games journalist. There you go. Welcome to Jay's stream, getting John and John the Reactor. You'd be surprised the things that these streams become. I think I partially blame Armand for this, but he and I and a lot of the folks here in chat kind of are in the same little circle of online friends. And so we kind of end up in each other's chat all the time, and things kind of go off the rails a little bit, and the same jokes keep coming up, and we always kind of go down different tangents, and that's kind of becomes the theme of the stream. I'm just going to tell them I'm allowing you to pay me for my articles. That will get me in there. They like confidence. They like confidence. When I think when I pitched myself to them, I pitched it in terms of they needed to fire Max Booth III and hire me. But of course, I presented it as a joke and everything, and Max still writes for them, of course. But they enjoyed my humor and took a couple articles from me. And then over time, I get better at figuring out what they wanted. I was tending to write a lot of farcical type articles, kind of countdowns, but everything on the countdown was a joke. And even when you're using humor, they still like it to be something that's practical and that kind of thing. So I've kind of moved away from the absurdist type humor and have done some of the articles are funny, but more serious type things. John says, hey, if any of you want to come on my recording of Wandering Monster, I would love to have the audience. Are you doing it on Twitch? Is that what's happening? Share a link or something, man. I don't have an open policy of everybody sharing links, but if you here on Twitch, okay. So it just when are you doing it? Are you doing it right now? Are you trying to pull audience from me right now? That's okay if you are. Yeah, tell me what time you're going to be on. I'm not doing a long stream today because I'm just doing this. Yeah, give me a time. Give me a day and a time, man. I was going to say as long as I'm Wednesday evenings, 8:30 Central. All right, that sounds good. I was going to say I might be on the road, but I could watch it on the road too because I have Twitch on my phone. we could just watch screens all the time. And of course, I don't drive myself anymore because I'm a mess. So very slowly, I've not quite gotten rich enough for the lifestyle that I want, but I am getting sick enough for the lifestyle I want. So like all those like privileges that you get from being rich, if you're the right level of sick, you get that same thing too. But I could probably pitch an article about working non-book events. There you go. Yeah, so like if you're sick enough, other people drive you places, like other people give you stuff, other people take care of you. So, I'm doing okay. Like I can't complain, being a full-time writer. I'm making at least enough to feed myself and my family on a semi-regular basis. But where I'm not rich enough to get all the privileges I want, I've kind of gotten sick enough to where I get my privileges. Also, I surround myself with very kind people. So people in the industry and my family have been very good to me with everything I got going on, all jokes aside. I'm going to keep going with the edit, but please feel free to continue to chat it up and chat. I'm very happy to break away. This has been a lot of fun. I've not been on stream for a couple weeks because again, I've been adjusting to medicines, and then I had kindness is the best. And then I've had like issues with my kidneys as well. People talk about comorbidities, but like basically that's me. Aside from my kidneys, my heart, and my brain, everything is fine. But when those three things are kind of wrong, they kind of cause each other trouble. And I actually reached a point where like I was having so much trouble with some things that I was missing trouble with other stuff. So they would like fix an irregular heartbeat, and then I'd realize my kidneys were hurting. And so that's just kind of one of the realities. I've had a very good few years where things were kind of together. And of course the heart attack at the beginning of this year kind of threw everything out of whack. Very good doctors and everything else, but it's just kind of one of those things where like everything that causes a problem that you got to fix causes other problems. I'm not quite circling the drain. It's not quite that bad. But I am constantly reminded of my own mortality, let's say. And so it's kind of one of those things where you're just trying to get by. So again, previous to this year, when I knew that I was going to be recovering from a heart attack, I'd planned to stream every day of the month. I may still do that at some point down the line, but I'm not planning it right now. And I've always loved that because it got me on every day. People came on and knew I was going to be there and could expect me. And I got good stories out of it. It was one of those things where like not every story you write is good, but if you're writing a new story every day for an entire month, you kind of get real creative and some real interesting stuff happens. But again, I made this comment online a couple times. Like I didn't expect recovery to go fast, but there's been more than once that I thought I was further along than I was. So like I things had kind of gotten fixed enough to where I could say, I feel pretty good comparatively. And then I would have some kind of setback, which was basically just something coming up to remind me that, oh, you're still recovering from all this. So take it easy. So streaming every day wasn't something I could do. And as I was adjusting to my meds, I skipped a couple weeks of streams there. And even getting back on now, I kind of have a little bit of a headache because I'm on a 24-hour release of nitroglycerin. And of course, leaf blowers are going in my neighbor's yard. But I kind of felt like, whoa, I feel like I'm dragging to get on here. But once I got back on stream, I remembered what I liked about it. And some of it's you guys being here. But just this act of just being creative and not being in isolation the way that writing normally works, which is, I'm fine with that most of the time. But there's just something invigorating about being on and working on something with people, and almost like you're in the room together and just kind of working things through. So I really missed this sort of the creative part that comes with streaming your writing, which is different than the creativity of writing in general, which I also love. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for being here. We've missed you, Jay, but you have to take care of yourself first. Absolutely. And listen to me. Absolutely. You miss me. Absolutely. I need to take care of myself because I'm so awesome. But yeah, I've given myself permission to be slower at things. I've given myself permission to fail at things. I've given myself permission to do smaller versions of things that I plan to do, including streaming here. So it's going to be cool to be on today and tomorrow at 3:15, and then traveling on Thursday. I think that's a good slow return back to streaming. But I really think it invigorates me as a writer in a way that other things do. Yeah, I agree with Tom. I want you around more than I want you around me. Well, there you go. But I am looking forward to seeing you guys. I missed one about the Ghoulish Book Festival, which is happening in Texas. Oh, that reminds me, I have a gift for you. I'll give it to you at the Ghoulish Book Festival. Sounds good. I'm really looking forward to that. Of course, Ghoulish Book Festival is in San Antonio. It's being run by the good people at Perpetual Motion Machine, which includes Laurie Michelle and Max Booth III. I imagine that they are giving themselves ulcers, trying to run a convention, set up for a convention in addition to the publishing and everything else they do. Much like John Baltusberger, they don't know when to say no to the new thing they want to do. But I am super excited to be at a convention that Max Booth III hatched. I mean, that is going to be awesome. He's a little bit unhinged in the best possible ways. I imagine that the thing itself is going to be quite professional. Like, it's going to be set up well. Of course, it's going to be a first year convention, but there's something I really do like about first year conventions. They can be a mess, but there's something about like the passion of the people putting it on, because it's always a passion project that first year. And they have the best of intentions. They know what they don't like about what they've seen other places. They know the experience they want people to have. They want people to have a good time at it. Sometimes the crowd is big, sometimes it's not, but there's just something about being there that first time. And then especially if you know people there, like the Ghoulish Book Festival is going to be like that. It may become an annual thing. It may not. But they do change over time. Every convention from year to year is different. And sometimes when conventions start to grow, the feel of them that made them really cool in that first or second year sometimes changes. But again, all that to say that I love the stuff that Max and Laurie put together just as a general life thing. And to be a part of a convention that they're doing, I'm more excited about that than just about any other convention that we can name. And of course, knowing that, like, my own limitations, I'm probably not going to be traveling that far across the country often. So it's cool that these things aligned in a way that are going to allow me to see everybody that I care about there. That first year convention, something run by Max. Just even interacting with him with the panels that he's putting together. I'm super excited about that. And it's been a while since I've been really excited about a bunch of things. Part of it is, again, like with the cardiac stuff I have going on, there's some depression that comes with that. Now, I feel like I have a pretty good perspective on that because I understand not feeling well. I understand health things. I understand that this is just it's almost a side, it's like trying to get your heart back in rhythm. The depression's kind of a side effect of the cardiac stuff itself. But it was kind of cool because, like, I've sort of been going through the motions, kind of, giving myself permission not to feel well in terms of, my mental state and stuff, but still taking care of myself, still doing the cardiac rehab to build my body back up. I'm still sitting down and writing, even on days when I don't feel like it and that kind of thing. But there's been these glimmers recently where I've been excited about things. I'm excited about the convention coming up and things like that. But then there's other little things too, like the idea that, things like this happening, you kind of have to come to grips with the reality of your situation. Like that, I've always felt like I've been on borrowed time with the kidney failure and having to get a kidney transplant years ago, the cognitive issues that I've had building up over time, and then of course the heart issues that definitely came up this year. I'm aware of my own mortality. I'm aware of the borrowed time that I'm on. More so now than probably I was before this year started. So things like thinking about my kids and how they're growing up and what they need and how I set them up well for the time that I have with them and then eventually the time that I'm not going to be with them. Very recently, some of the things that they've done have just been kind of cool in terms of just showing responsibility and taking care of themselves and showing interest in things. And just a bunch of little things that showed me how good of people they are, which is something that we've, of course, as parents, we've just been fighting for. Number one, to keep them alive, but number two, to make them into decent people. and having them working from home on school and stuff has allowed us the freedom to be able to like let them explore some things they care about in terms of music and design and art and things like that, in addition to the schoolwork we definitely make them do. And just some of the things that I've seen them just really excel at and take responsibility for. I had these moments of sort of euphoria where I really felt hopeful, just really happy, to where like I'm always looking around, making sure they're not messing up or being rude to their mother, or, all those kind of things that a father's supposed to do. But those moments where I can kind of take a step back, and just sometimes it's the smallest thing, just the little thing about like, them, the youngest boy doing his own laundry and coming out to ask us to come look real quick to make sure he didn't overfill the washing machine, that it wasn't, they hadn't put too many clothes in the one load. And just little things like that, just that little conscientious stuff like that kind of tell me that they're taking care of things and that they care about doing things right and that sort of thing. It kind of gave me hope in the sense of like, okay, they are becoming decent human beings, but then also like there is going to be a day, maybe sooner than later, maybe not. I might outlive all of you, but knowing that I'm on borrowed time, it's just very cool to see that they're going to be all right. That they are becoming the kind of people they need to be in order to, be good to their mother one day when I'm not around, and all that kind of stuff as well. So like just that moment where I felt good about that, and it kind of raised me up out of like this kind of ongoing depression that I had going because of the cardiac issues. And so even that moment of hope kind of gave me hope in the sense of like, oh yeah, this may be temporary. These are things that I'm breaking out of and that kind of stuff. So, I guess all that rambling to say that like there can be a lot of stuff going wrong in your life at the same time, which is kind of what I have going on. But, with all that going on, I still feel like I'm having a good year. I still feel like that I'm getting out of life what I want, and, if I had to wait for everything to be okay, in order for my life to be good, it probably wouldn't be. But I'm just so thankful that I'm kind of in a place that even when things aren't going perfectly, I can still appreciate what I have in life. In many ways, I'm living the dream. Like what I'm doing for a living right now is just this. I'm writing and, doing Twitch and all that other kind of stuff. And if I backed up 10 years, or I might have to back up 20 years to when I was healthy, but looking back at those times, jobs that I was working that I didn't like and all that kind of stuff, if I were looking forward to now, even with all the health stuff I have going on, I really am living my life's dream. This idea of what I do for a living with writing, what I'm allowed to do, the fact that, despite everything that's gone on with pandemic and my health and everything else, that I'm going to get to see people at conventions again. I wouldn't ask for anything else. I wouldn't ask for anything to be changed. Tom said, I've never wanted kids, but it must be interesting to watch them grow and to notice aspects of yourself in them. Yeah, my thing is when I see them get better than me, there's a lot about me I don't want them to pick up. And again, I'm not saying any of this to push kids on people. I don't think that I'm not of the mindset that everybody has to have kids to have a fulfilled life or anything like that. So don't misunderstand any of that. But and I never try to talk anybody into having kids. There's a lot of reasons not to have them, but having had them, it's cool to see like some of the stuff paying off. I love you with all my heart, Jay. I have to jump into work meeting, but I'll try to come back after. Thank you, man, and look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm going to try to catch you tonight as well. I'm going to leave. I'm going to have Twitch open on my computer to your channel, so that when you do come on, it'll already be on, and I can jump in with what you're doing tonight. All right. Again, everybody feel free to jump in and talk at any time. I'm on no schedule here, just kind of doing my edit here instead of a writing. Okay, when she opened the door, she made no clear effort to stay quiet. More light from outside the room revealed more details of her than Jack cared to see. She had a lot of bulk, stretching the insides of her candy-striped dress. The wings splashed with an oily rainbow in the new light as they blurred through their motion. her face and neck. Need to correct that. All these typos. That's what happens when you just write like you can write whatever you want. Her face and neck had several folds of flesh, and her jeweled eyes seemed to bulge and be sunken into that extra skin at the same time. Her hair was long and pink, but looked uncombed and brittle. This is a very ugly tooth fairy I'm painting here. Jack was just happy that she was leaving. From the hall, the deep sawing noise of Dad's snoring carried through the open door. Ever so often, the fairy would bump the wall with a thump of her great mass and a sizzling buzz from her wings vibrating on the wall. Those noises retreated down the stairs, leaving only the old familiar snoring. Dylan sat bolt upright in bed and whispered, "What the hell was that?" Jack didn't use bad words like Dylan did, and Dylan usually didn't use them in front of Jack or in the house. The question seemed appropriate to Jack tonight, though. Let me say the question and the cussing. The question and the cussing seemed appropriate to Jack tonight, though. "This was your idea," he said, without moving from under his covers or from his displaced pillow. He wanted to pull the covers over his head, but he could still smell her boggy odor and feared it might be on his pillowcase. I think that is a compound word. Well, I'm not going to find out that way. Pillowcase, yes, compound word. Now I have one less word in my word count. It's like I'm going backwards. And then trapped under the covers with him. "Never mind that, Jack. Do you think Mom and Dad know that thing comes into our house every time we lose a tooth?" Jack didn't like to think about that at all. His parents consenting to this situation seemed off to say the least. "I hope not." "Where do they think the money comes from when they aren't the ones putting it there?" Jack tried to swallow a couple times, but his throat was too dry. He wasn't about to walk down the hall to the bathroom sink, though. He hadn't decided yet if he might just wet the bed if he needed to go tonight. "I don't know," he finally answered. "Just be quiet until she's gone." Dylan pulled the cord on the clown lamp next to his bed. The low wattage light was like the sun in Jack's eyes. Those two happy clowns around the curve. Let's say way too happy. Those way too happy. We'll say dancing clowns. Frolicking may be a better word, but I'm going to leave dancing. Those way too happy dancing clowns around the curve of the hard plastic shade of that lamp scared Jack. But tonight he had fears. I'm going to need a comma there, because I'm starting with a conjunction. But tonight he had fears that made the lamp clowns less than an afterthought. "Turn that off. Are you crazy? What will she do if she finds out we were awake and saw her?" Dylan didn't answer at first, but then he asked, "Show me what she put under your pillow." "Dylan." The front door to the house opened with a crackle and then slammed closed. Dad paused, but then returned to a sloppy, uneven snoring. "See? We're good. She's gone." Jack shook his head, ruffling his pillow. "She can see the light from outside. She'll know." "Show me what's under your pillow first." Jack sat up and wrapped his blankets tight around himself. He didn't want to be up anymore, but he didn't want to think about the tooth fairy's hands under his pillow. "You get it. I don't want to touch it." "Don't be a baby." Dylan was back to his old attitude despite what had just visited them. He crossed between the beds and flipped up Jack's pillow from the warm side to the cold. Jack shuffled down toward the foot of the bed. The light from the clown lamp revealed it was a coin. It didn't look like a quarter, though. Dylan bent down for a closer look before he touched it. "What is it?" Jack asked. "It's a coin." Dylan lifted it up between his fingers. In the light, a little too much like the fairy, a little too much like the way the fairy inspected Jack's tooth. Okay, I'm going to need to work on this sentence. Give me just a second, guys. Dylan lifted up between his fingers in the light. Lifted it up. No, it needs to be between his fingers. Jack lifted it up between his fingers in the light, a little too much like the way the fairy had inspected. Maybe that's what's missing. Had inspected Jack's tooth. All right, I'm going to take out for his liking. I like that phrase, but it just makes the sentence too bulky. It was golden colored and thick. What country is it from? Dylan shrugged. Hell if I know. It looks like pirate gold. Pirate gold? Jack was tempted to take it. It was his tooth and his coin, but he still didn't want to touch it. Yeah, there's a skull on one side like a pirate flag, but the skull has horns like a bull and fangs like a... Don't say it, Dylan. Okay, fangs like a you-know-what. The other side is a bunch of bones shaped like dog bones, but with the hearts... bones with the hearts on the ends. Jack didn't understand that description. He let it go, though. Is there writing or numbers? Dylan didn't answer at first as he turned toward the light and held it closer to his face. Some kind, I guess, but it's not American. The words look like they're... Oh, wrong kind of there. The homophone typos make me feel the dumbest, so I always try to find those. If I use the wrong kind of there and it gets through a story, I'm never going to show my face in public again. The words look like they're spelled using teeth. Using teeth? How? Outside, a door slammed. It was too loud. It was too loud and hollow to be just a car door. My nose is really itchy, sorry. Don't want it to make it look like I'm picking my nose the whole stream. But my nose itches. It sounded more like a door on a larger vehicle, like a service truck, but not like the rolling doors on the back. I'm going to change this. But not the way the rolling doors on the back sounded. Okay, that's better. Two house doors slammed next. One was near them. The other sounded like it was farther down the street. Then a third house door slammed shut across the street. Dylan and Jack met eyes. Jack shook his head and cowered into his blankets. Dylan set the coin on his side table under the direct light. Under the direct light with a sturdy click. He then moved to the window. Dylan, don't. Shut up, I want to see. Jack shed his blankets and reached for the light, averting his eyes from the coin under it. It took him 2 tries, but he got the light turned off. What are you doing, Jack? Turn that back. Never mind. I can see better without it. Holy crap. All right, I'm going to put an exclamation point here. Don't want to use exclamation points all the time, but if you use them sparingly, they serve the purpose of emphasis that they are meant to serve. Jack hated to do it, but he found himself padding across their room in bare feet to stand at his older brother's side in the window. Jack felt but didn't really register the dust bunnies from the fan twinning into his toes in between. Say that had fallen from the fan twinning in between his toes. There we go. Outside was a truck. It was like an ice cream truck. Hold on, man, apparently articles are not my friends today. Why are you even watching a guy that writes as poorly as I am? Outside was a truck. It was like an ice cream truck, but double-deckered, like a bus from England. It almost seemed too tall. Again, there's that, my least favorite kind of typo, when I use the wrong kind of to or the wrong kind of there. If I don't catch those and publish those, I will never show my face in public again. It almost seemed too tall to pass under the power lines, but there it was in the center of their neighborhood, let's say neighborhood street. just a couple doors shy of their driveway. The sides were painted in splotches of pink and orange. Darker accents looked to Jack like splashed blood on the sides. The engine was running. I'm going to put a comma there. Oh, the leaf blowers are getting closer. If you guys have any questions for the leaf blowers outside, let me know. I'll shout them out the window. And the vehicle shuddered from side to side every few seconds. Some dark shape was behind the wheel. All through the yards and street, winged creatures passed back and forth between the houses and the vehicle. Dylan shook his head. What is that? The Tooth Fairy bus? I think Tooth Fairy's compound, right? Nope. Okay. I don't know why I lost my mind there for a second. What is that? The Tooth Fairy bus? What are doing here? Well, that's not good, Jay. What are they doing here? There we go. Everyone can't have lost teeth today, can they, Dylan? All right, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to need this to be the same. All right, what is that? The Tooth Fairy bus? What are they doing here? Let's make... All right, I'm going to keep that his. All right, let's pull this up and make it one statement by Jack. Okay, that'll be... What are they doing here? Everyone can't have lost teeth today, can they, Dylan? Dylan shrugged. I don't know. Not all those houses have children in them. A cluster of tooth fairies, all wearing different colors, all with different... What am I doing? All right. All with different dresses on. All large with extra folds of skin, gathered in the street, bathed in the street headlights of the vehicle. They were sharing something, looking between them, passing things around. Say different wild hair colors. Okay, that looks good. All right, what do they got? Jack asked. He glanced over at the dark table, knowing that the coin was there. Not a quarter, not American money, not anything like what they had been given for past teeth. Tonight was different. Teeth, Dylan said. What? Jack turned his attention out and down to the Tooth Fairy meeting in the street. They're looking at teeth. One of the fairies held up something too large to be a tooth. It was curved and pink. What's that? Dylan swallowed loud enough for Jack to hear the click, let's say. To hear the click beside him. Looks like someone's false teeth. I hope they're false teeth. Jack shook his head. What else could they be? All right, Tom says. Routine, sing for 5 minutes for 1,000. Wait a minute. I very purposely did not put those kind of things on there. When I saw that stuff on Armand's, I never called him on it. I never pulled any of those that were purposely meant to annoy him. But I've avoided all that stuff, even like the hydrate ones and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want my stream to be where people were making me do things I didn't want to do particularly. Lord, could you imagine how miserable it would be for me to just sit here and sing for 5 minutes? Good Lord. I wouldn't do it for 1,000,000 coins. Looks like someone's false teeth. I hope they're false teeth. Jack shook his head. What else could they be? They look a little bloody from up here. Dad continued to snore behind them as the screaming started out there. A few lights went on down the street. The cries came from inside some of the houses. One voice was an adult woman. Another was a closer... Another from... I'll say another scream. Another scream from a closer house was not. I don't know if that paragraph is clear, but I'm going to leave it the way it is. The fairies seemed unfazed by this as they separated. A few of them flew into an opening on top of the tall vehicle. Others moved... Excuse me, I don't know why my nose itches so much. Others moved to houses further down, opening and closing doors loudly with no stealth. All right. I think that sentence works. I'm just not reading it well. What are they? Is that Dylan? Is that real? A fairy flew out of the open door of a house with one of the screamers. Jack swore the fairy had a severed head held by the hair. The fairy hovered over the opening in the vehicle's roof. The creature made a fist and punched the mouth in the head over and over. Punched the mouth of the head over and over. Teeth fell like rain until the fairy cast the head away into the bushes across the street. Dylan, did you see? Just be quiet. I saw it. Just be quiet. Glass shattered out there somewhere. Two more fairies flew through the open door, and the screaming stopped. A moment later, let's say of one of the houses, one of the neighbors' houses, and the screaming stopped. A moment later, they flew back out with handfuls of teeth. All right, across the street, all the lights were on and the door flung open. Jack started, I know who it is. A fairy with green hair carried out Kathy's limp body, wearing a pair of flannel pajamas. Kathy was in middle school. Jack couldn't remember if she lost all her teeth yet or not. Her mouth didn't look good as they passed under the streetlight. Kathy's parents ran out after the kidnapping fairy. Her father had a baseball bat. Kathy's mom... Okay. Sometimes if you are missing the wrong word, it's hard to figure out what you're trying to say. Kathy's mom held a phone to her ear. Good Lord, Jay, where are you? All these twos and theirs. If I left that in there and published it, I wouldn't be able to show my face again. To her ear, and cried out in a garble of syllables that didn't sound like words. Okay, I was going to add something else to that, but I don't need to. Jack said, "We need to call the cops." I think she already is. Kathy's dad caught up with the green-haired creature. It ducked the swing of the bat, causing the man to stagger in his driveway from the near miss, and he lost one of his slippers. The fairy laid Kathy down at the corner of her driveway, like she was part of the trash pickup. Her father came in for another swing, but the fairy caught the bat with one hand and lifted the man by his throat with the other. Say, in the other fist. All right. I had a sentence in a novel I wrote for Nano, which literally made no sense. Eventually, I had to just delete the entire thing because I had no idea what I was trying to say. I'm trying to remember what I wrote a sentence. I was doing a kid's story at one point, and I had a sentence where there was something about the sentence just being so weird that I wanted to figure out what it was, but I couldn't. And I think the sentence was Sam, because Sam was there. So literally, I don't know what Sam was doing something because Sam was there. I don't know what it was, but all the sentence was Sam because Sam was there. And I of course I deleted the sentence, but I'm like, I got to figure out some way to make that a title, Sam because Sam was there or something. And I don't know for the life of me what I was trying to do. And there was another one. There's another sentence where for some reason I put on the corner twice. So, like they went to the store on the corner or something like that, but it was weirder than that. And it's one of those things where the sentence was just so dumb that I kind of lost respect for myself because it was in there. But I always have sentences like that somewhere. by his throat in the other fist. Kathy, that's a strange transition, isn't it? Kathy's father showed no fear as he struggled in the air. Just eye bulging anger. Here we go. They flew back into the bushes before the fairy dropped him out of sight onto his back and went to work with the bat. Well, let's just have the fairy go to work with the bat, not go to work. There we go. Went to work with the bat. Good Lord. Apparently I was trying to save time by not using any connecting words. Kathy's mom screamed louder. A fairy with purple hair flew up out of the vehicle and dove toward their porch. The mom dropped her phone and ran inside. She tried to close the door, but the purple-haired fairy forced her way in, and they disappeared inside. The brothers... See, now it sounds like Kathy has a brother, and that's not what I'm trying to do. So we're going to have to use their names again. Jack and Dylan went on watching as their father continued to snore. The fairies finally all flew and entered the top of the vehicle. Okay, that's not how I want to say that either. The fairies finally flew in from all directions. I don't know why the word finally is in there. It just makes it weird with too many F's in a row. And it's an adverb, and anytime you can take out an adverb, it's always a good thing. The fairies flew in from all directions and entered the top of the vehicle like bees returning to a hive. The vehicle rolled slowly forward past the boy's house. As? Maybe I need the word as here. Hold on. Let's see if I can solve all my son's problems with just the word as. And for my next trick, as the vehicle rolled slowly forward past the boy's house, that's good. Let's put a comma there, just because that's how commas work. There was a light tinkle of off-tune music that marked the tall truck leaving the neighborhood. That's good stuff. I like that. I have an issue with first-person POV where the majority of my sentences will start with I. When I try to change it up, I wind up slipping into passive voice. It's frustrating. I have an unpopular opinion on that. I maybe unpopular is not the right word. A minority opinion on that. I'm not bothered by sentences starting with I in a first-person narrative. So, like, it doesn't pull me out as much as it does other people. Now, of course, you kind of want to do the thing where, you throw in some description sentences in between, like you just state that, Billy's telling the story in Billy's Jack and Dylan fought each other, that kind of thing. So he could describe what he's seeing without including I in it. So you take it out where you can. But the number of people that get upset about too many I's in a first-person narrative, I don't feel that. Now, of course, you're not writing a story just for me, so that doesn't work. But again, that criticism, I don't like it very much. I don't like that. That's a thing that people get hung up on. Also, I know the weakness of passive voice, but it does not bother me as much as it bothers other people. Now, of course, in my own work, editors give me hell about it, and I have to change it, and I oblige to that because I use editors for a reason, and it's to fix what's wrong with me in my writing. But passive voice being in particular places, I think sometimes it works, and I think in certain genres, the tone of it works for particular sentences, particular scenes. I don't think passive voice used occasionally is as bad as people say it is. Like I don't think it truly bothers readers as much as we think. Now, the problem is, of course, people who tend to use passive voice, which I'm just using just now, have other issues with their writing that makes it weak. So that it's one of those things that, like, it's probably a symptom of a bigger writing problem. But in and of itself, I don't think that passive voice is as terrible as people think it is. Now, of course, just like with anything, if you use it all the time, then you got a problem. But that's true of simple sentences. That's true of starting sentences with the same word over and over again. That's true of having the same length paragraphs all the time. So anything that you can name, if you do it all the time, that's where the problem is. And I think passive voice kind of falls more into that category, because I think there's times where it actually makes more sense and reads better to the reader than flipping around your sentence to make it more direct, but sometimes less like the way people talk sometimes. So that's probably advice that you can't take action on, because people are going to tell you don't want to start all your sentences with I all the time, or you have too many I's in your first person narrative, or too much passive voice, or that kind of thing. And generally they're right, but the idea of excluding it all the time, like it's the plague, I think is an overreach by editors and writers all the time. But again, I'm definitely the minority opinion on that. And a lot of people would say, well, Jay, that's why your stories are terrible. I don't think my stories are terrible, but there are people who do. And again, that was passive voice as well. All right. As the vehicle rolled slowly forward past the boy's house, there was a light tinkle of off-tune music that marked the tall truck leaving the neighborhood. A raid? Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Hope that you guys enjoy yourself here for the time you decide to be here. It's a Blitzer Blitz. Oh my goodness. I don't think I prepared for that. Was I supposed to pack something? Is it the kind of thing that requires a raincoat? What should I do? Well, welcome anyway. Hope you enjoy my writing stream. I hope you had fun from whence you have come, and that I do not let you down with this crazy killer Tooth Fairy story that I'm in the middle of editing. All right, the doors were all closed again. Kathy still lay at the end of her driveway. She was not the only body left out in the night like trash. Dylan. Both boys sucked in air as the pink-haired fairy flew up into their view inches from the outside of the second-story window. That's when Jack recognized her eyes as those of an insect. He wanted to stagger backward away from her and the window. I am telling you what, I am leaving out articles everywhere in this story today. It's like I was doing it on purpose. But his knees locked up on him as a smell as... Okay. Sorry, I need to fix a sentence. As urine dribbled out and ran down one pajama pant leg. Dylan, despite being older, grabbed tight to his brother, further holding him in place. All right. I have come from writing a flash fiction. There you go. Killer Tooth Fairy sounds interesting. Flash fiction, I just got through reading select scenes from The End of the World by Brian Keene. I'm rereading Brian Keene's work in order. It's an older piece, so it's from earlier in his career, but it was all flash fiction. And I do think that short stories really do show what a writer is capable of. And I think flash fiction in particular really tests what a writer can do. If you do a really interesting and captivating piece of flash fiction, I think you're showing the best of your skills. And I really think you're stretching your creativity. So it's cool when an author, first of all, attempts it, but then succeeds at it. So hope it went really well for you. The Tooth Fairy, Jack's Tooth Fairy, slowly lifted one fat, hairy finger to her pale lips, and even through the glass they could hear the long, drawn-out hiss of her shh. She paused, maybe long enough to confirm they understood, and then she looped away through the air with more cartoon fairy grace than her bulk seemed to imply was possible. Jack tried a few times to speak but failed. His brother finally released him to lean against the window frame to hold himself up. Jack wavered on his feet and got the first deep breath he could pull since Dylan started squeezing him. Now he found his voice. "What do we do?" "We keep our mouths shut like she told us. Jack, are you crazy?" Jack wanted to remind... Let me correct something there. You always want your verbs to match your subjects. Jack wanted to remind Dylan that staying up to catch the Tooth Fairy had been his idea, but that point seemed small at the moment. "People will know. Look what they did. People will know." "That doesn't have anything to do with us," Dylan said. "She told us to be quiet and that she'll leave us alone. I didn't hear her say any of that. That's the message I got." See there, Tom, I left an I out and it made the whole sentence not make sense. "That's the message I got from her. Shush, Jack." "Why would she leave us alone after we faked sleeping? After we saw what they did? Why wouldn't they come back to finish us off?" Dylan shook his head but said, "Maybe she accepted your tooth as an offering. Maybe that bought us all our lives." Jack shook his head. "That makes no sense. We've lost teeth before, other kids too. No one ever had a neighborhood killing spree after. It makes no sense." "Keep your voice down, Jack. You'll wake up Dad." Jack raised his voice. Let's say into. Jack raised his voice into a shout instead. All right. "He just slept through a bunch of murder fairies. If that didn't wake him up, thunder carried through the night." Then another clap. Then a third. Then a third, followed by a fourth. The whole house vibrated. I tell you what, Tom, I'm leaving out words everywhere. And it always seems to be a key word that makes it harder for me to figure out what I was trying to say. It's like I'm making a puzzle for myself trying to edit this story. These were giant footsteps, and the boys looked through the window again to see a skeleton walking down the center of the street, standing taller than the houses, taller than the highest trees beyond the yards. The bony creature, with horns and fangs protruding from its exposed skull, reached down and lifted up one of the bodies from the end of a driveway at the far... I'm going to change this to foot of the driveway because I'm using end twice. At the foot of a driveway at the far end of the street. The boys both stared in silence. Jack didn't know what his brother thought of this new manifestation, but he expected to see the new bone monster eat the poor... Okay, is this a person? Or obviously it's a person. Is it a man or a woman? Reached down and lifted one of the bodies. To eat the poor person alive. Okay. Instead, it cast the body over its shoulder into a large brown sack. The monster crossed the street and collected a woman in a housecoat that Jack couldn't see before. Her leg was twisted badly, but she was alive and screaming as the giant skeleton, let's just be specific, as the giant skeleton's hand dropped her into the sack too. It sagged with the weight of the two bodies inside and swung back and forth just over the street. The skeletal monster added a third body to its growing collection and then ducked under a power line. The poles on both sides shook and a cascade of sparks rained down on someone's yard. The nightlight between, let's say, in their bedroom. In their bedroom, the nightlight between the brothers, flickered, but then went steady again. I'll say held steady. Held is a better word than went. Every little bit helps. "Dylan, what do we do?" Jack asked as the creature collected bodies from one of the yards. We stay quiet and do nothing. Okay, that's not a question, so let me take the question mark out. I have an extra question mark if anyone needs one. I'm not using it. Jack leaned forward and looked across the street. Kathy's out there. Forget her, Jack. She's dead. Her whole family's dead. We're still alive. We need to get away from the window. She's still breathing. I can see that from here. The ground thundered with the bone monster's steps. Just get away from the window. Dylan moved toward his bed and pulled at the shoulder of Jack's pajama top. It was an old one that was getting too small. It was getting too small for him. Let's say. For him. And showed Jack's skinny belly. The image was fading and the material was pearled all over. Still, one of Jack's favorite superheroes was emblazoned across his chest. He did move away from the window, but he ran out the door and down the stairs. Ran out let's say the bedroom door. We'll be specific here. Bedroom door and down the stairs. Jack! 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 Dylan yelled from the bedroom, but did not follow. The snoring of their father continued as if nothing were amiss. All right, that's good stuff. Jack fought with the locks on the front door. Let's say instead of with, we'll say while. Because I have two withs in this sentence. I have an extra with if anyone needs one. I'm not using it. Jack fought with the locks on the front door while his older brother still yelled from the stairs. Okay, since I changed that, I need to change this. You make one change, you just got to change everything. Then he realized it was already unlocked from when the Tooth Fairy left. He flung it open and ran out into the night against her orders to stay quiet and presumably to stay out of it. Okay. He crossed over the grass toward the street instead of sticking to the concrete path. The grass was already damp with dew and he stepped on something sharp, maybe a prickly gumball from one of the sweet gum trees in the front yard. Jack hissed and hobbled, but continued running. His bare feet... Lots of missing words. I must have been writing in a hurry when I was first drafting this, but that's what first drafts are for. His bare feet slapped against asphalt as he crossed to where Kathy lay at the end of her drive. More glass shattered in the direction of the monster. Something crunched. It sounded like metal, maybe a car. Jack shook Kathy by her shoulders and whispered into her face, wake up, Kathy. We have to go." All right, I know he's nervous and excited, but I still need to put enough words in here for us to understand what he means. "It's dangerous. Please wake up and come with me right now." Her mouth was a bloody mess. Pink bubbles froze from her split lips and burst each time she exhaled a sour breath. Jack turned his face away and saw what was left of her father. He shut his eyes tight and breathed through his mouth, waiting for the sick shock to pass. The ground boomed again, and Jack looked up the street to see the bony Goliath grabbing up the discarded bodies of his neighbors from their driveways. The sack behind its back was getting heavy. Jack watched Mr. Felzer fall in next. Felzer was a policeman. How could the monster be able to do something like that to the police? I don't need a quotation mark there. Jack circled around and got his hands under Kathy's arms. He tried to heave her up, but her awkward dead weight was too much for him. He just managed to get his lap under her head before he dropped her again. "Kathy, please wake up. We're both going to die." He didn't know that for a fact. I could probably get away with not having it there, but it reads better with it. There was no telling apparently I'm going to have to correct every other word. There was no telling where the giant skeleton might take them, no telling what he might do that would make dying a better choice. Make dying, let's say, a better option. Because he doesn't really have a choice. He seemed to be connected to those violent tooth fairies. Maybe he was their master, maybe their god. The teeth might be offerings to him. The fairies could take the teeth, but something that big might want the rest of the bones. I like that line. The bone god drew closer, collecting... All right, I'm going to put a comma there. Collecting every single body left out in the neighborhood, let's say for him. And his giant sack. Ah, what happened? Okay. Did you see the bone fairy thing going around the internet? No! What was that? Some kind of meme? This sounds like it was inspired by that thing. Bone fairy, what was... Oh, no, wait. Maybe I did get the title from that. Oh, like the idea that... No, I'm probably not seeing that. I think there was a discussion online. It's been so long ago since I started this story. I don't remember where I got the idea from. But the idea that, like, tooth fairies were part of a smaller order of bone fairies or whatever. I can't remember. The tooth fairy is the smaller, friendlier version of the larger and meaner bone fairy. That may have come from that. My original idea for that, and like that's kind of where the title meme card came from. I'm going to switch over to that real quick. Like my original idea was that these guys were going to sneak in with the tooth fairy and follow her back to where she came from, and that there would be some kind of bone god there. Whoever did it made gorgeous art. I need to see that. I don't think I saw the art, but my original idea for this was that they were going to wake up and see that there was really a tooth fairy, and they were going to follow the tooth fairy back to where she went. And that there was going to be this whole like collection of bones and these scarier monsters down there. But I couldn't figure out how to make that work. Like this idea that what does the tooth fairy have a sack, and were they going to sneak into the sack, and how was she not going to notice they were there? But so like that original idea of following her back to the land of the bone fairies or whatever it was kind of the original idea, but logistically it just made no sense. So the story kind of evolved into this thing where they're kind of ravaging this neighborhood. So I think it did come from an idea of like tooth fairies being like serving like a bone god of some kind or something like that. So I do think it probably came from a similar source when I first wrote down the title Secrets of the Tooth Fairy for this story idea that I had rolling around my head. But I don't remember exactly where it came from. All right. The bone god drew closer, collecting every single body left in the neighborhood for him and his giant sack. I'll have to check that out. Very good. I'll definitely look at that later. Thank you for sharing it. Jack took in a breath to beg Kathy back into consciousness, but the words died inside him as he glanced the other way and saw the pink-haired fairy floating above the street not far away. Of course, these the tooth fairies in this story are smaller, but they're not friendlier, so I guess it diverges in that way. She had her hairy arms crossed, and in the stark glow of the streetlights, he could see that all that hair was pink. Okay. You could see that all that hair, let's say on her body, on her bulky body, was pink. All right, there we go. Jack showed his teeth without realizing it, including the gap for the one he just lost that she took in exchange for a coin and the lives of everyone else on the street. He found his voice again. "You're not the boss of me. Go to hell." Whether she accepted his declaration or not, she remained bobbing in the air without advancing or retreating. Jack struggled to pull Kathy up and turned her body as he tried to drag her across the street before the bone god past the last few houses. Dylan ran up beside Jack on the other side of Kathy. He folded one of her arms over his shoulder and said, "Come on, Jack, let's go. Hurry." They half carried and half dragged Kathy across the street and up into their yard in awkward fits and bursts of motion. Both boys were huffing and puffing, but they kept going. Dylan let out a little squeak. Jack assumed his brother had spotted... I don't know what I thought I was running there. Had spotted the fairy watching them, because Dylan had held up his bad middle finger at her as they approached the steps to their house. All right, now, when I say bad middle finger, it sounds like Dylan hurt his finger instead of that Jack thinks it's the bad finger. What would you call... Let's just say his middle finger. I'm trying to be too cute by half, I think. All right, the bone god let out a low, deep growl. Then the thunder of his steps sped up. Jack afforded one short glance over his shoulder as they started to negotiate the steps. Let me change the tense there. The bone god kicked the back of the next door neighbor's car. The taillights shattered and the bent trunk popped open. That same foot tore through and uprooted the hedges between their yards. Its next step clipped their mailbox with a hollow pong noise. The pole shifted askew only a few inches, and the mailbox itself stayed firmly on its perch. Their dad did not mess around when he put something up. He built things to last. I could call it the rude finger. That's good. That's good. See, I'm glad you're here. I'm gonna put that in. His rude middle finger. Good stuff. I don't know. Are you going to require a story credit for that edit there? If I publish it, do I need to mention your contribution? All right. Their dad did not mess around when he put something up. He built things to last. The bone god actually tripped and scraped its knees over the drive in two long, chalky lines. It leaned forward, reaching for the brothers and Kathy. Right, just glad to help. Thank you so much. And I do appreciate your help. That was good. Sometimes it's hard to think on the fly. Jack skinned the top of his big toe as he almost missed the top step. Unlike the bone god, he kept his footing, and the brothers heaved through the open door with Kathy. They dropped her a little hard. I'll say a little too hard. They dropped her a little too hard in the foyer, and she let out a groan. I have left out all the A's and these in this story. If you guys have any extra A's and these I can borrow, I could sure use them. At least she was still alive. They both dove for the door and slammed it shut as the giant bony fingers reached for it. Let's say reached for them. That's a little more direct and scary. They fought the locks, and then the door bounced in its frame with heavy impacts. Say with a heavy impact. There we go. Both boys staggered away from it. Jack accidentally stepped on the side of Kathy's ankle. He apologized, but she only gave a slight whimper in response. There was another strike on the door. The wall to the right cracked, but the door held. Dad snorted on the end of a snore from upstairs and mumbled something. "What do we do?" Jack whispered. "I don't know." Dylan took another step back. The silence extended. I need to put "the" in there. The silence extended. It's probably better without the, but I'm going to need the "the" for that. The door exploded open as pieces of hardware flew past the boy's head. The fairy with her pink hair standing with her pink hair. I don't want to say standing because that confuses. Let's say sticking. The fairy with her pink hair sticking up all around, her wings buzzing in a blur, her bug eyes glaring, and her fingers and her fingers curled into claws flew back into the house with them. Dylan whispered out another curse word. It was one of the bad ones. Let's say it was one of the really bad ones. Really, really bad ones. Unless this is a magic thing to keep adults unconscious, their dad is officially the most useless adult in this adventure. In my humble opinion, of course. It's implied that there's something weird about him staying asleep. And also, like when the fairy was taking the tooth out from under Jack's pillow and he was pretending to be asleep, she wasn't being gentle. She was like knocking the pillow around and knocking his head around, and he couldn't figure out why everybody stayed asleep. Now, it may behoove me to address that more directly earlier in the story, but I do kind of imply that there's something strange going on, that the fact that they stayed asleep the whole time. And I'll do a second edit pass, and I may actually make that a more direct thing, because they do wonder why he's still asleep. Dylan whispered out another curse. It was one of the really, really bad ones. A bony hand too big for the opening reached through and I don't want to say locked, because we're talking about the door. Reached through and grabbed. I'll just keep it simple. Grabbed onto the fairy's wings, silencing them. The bone god jerked the fairy backward into the yard. After he released her, she spoke words in a high voice that would have been ridiculously funny under other circumstances. The words were none that the boys understood. The bone god growled and backhanded the fairy, sending her tumbling into the street. He turned to the boys and lowered one dark, empty socket to the door. The brothers... keep wanting to use they when I mean thee, and that's not good. The brothers backed up to the wall, leaving Kathy exposed on the floor. The bone god nodded its great skull and moved out of the opening. The ground thundered as it paced away, ducked under a power line and continued. I'm going to use the Oxford comma there. Why would I not? And continued collecting bodies up the street. This included the twisted form of Kathy's father, from out of their bushes, and what looked like her mother cast aside on their porch across the street. The fairy rose up. She faltered on her bent wings, but then approached the house in the air again. Jack wanted to run up and close the door, but he could see the lock was already busted. She paused in the doorway, glaring at the boys. Then she nodded, reached in, and pulled the broken door to in its frame. I know what that means, but that doesn't read right. Closed in its frame. The off-tone buzz of her wings retreated, and the thunderous steps of the bone god moved on. Dad snorted again. He mumbled something. Mom mumbled something back, and the snoring resumed. The sound of sirens rose in the distance and grew closer. The boys stood listening as Kathy drew noisy air through a nose that Jack could now see was bent. At a painful angle. All right, there we go. In the home stretch here. What do we do, Dylan? I don't know, man. I'd say we never leave our teeth under the pillow again, but that may have been what saved us and protected our house. I have no idea. No, Dylan, I mean about this, about Kathy, about her parents, the whole neighborhood. When the police get here, Mr. Phaser was a cop. I spelled his name differently this time than I did previously. I'll need to go back and get that. I'm actually going to highlight that. So we'll make Mr. Phaser bold. And that will remind me to go back and find how I spelled his name before. They'll want to know what happened to him. Kathy will want to know when she wakes up. And what am I supposed to do with that coin? Dylan just shook his head as tears welled in his eyes. I wish we hadn't stayed up. Jack sighed and said, I think we need to wake up Dad. Dylan shook his head and a couple tears broke loose and run down his cheeks. He's going to be so mad, Jack. And that's before we try to tell him about the monsters. Jack nodded and stared up the stairs. I'll do it. You stay with Kathy. The whole way up, listening to his father's growling snores, Jack thought about the Tooth Fairy's coin. Bones on one side, the face of the bone god on the other, letters in some unknown language spelled out in teeth. Why were they spared, and would she come back? Knowing the truth about the Tooth Fairy changed everything in Jack's life.